Hey, everybody. Jay and Brian here again. Jay Niblick with Intermetrics and Brian Arzani with Intermetrics. How you doing, Brian?
Hey, I'm doing great, Jay. It's a great freaking day. Woo!
Right. And we all got to spend some time with our kids who live in different cities this weekend. Mine graduated from college. Yours are graduating from military programs. So good weekend all the way around, man. Mother's Day and everything. If you guys are following and not following this, go ahead and follow. If you've seen these things, go to intermetrics.com, sign to follow up and subscribe there because Brian and I put these things out every week. This is 20 to profitability. We only give you 20 minutes. Seems weird, but Brian, why don't we only give them 20 minutes?
Because if this little timer goes longer than 20 minutes and you're hanging out just watching stuff, that's your biggest problem.
This is all about how do you create a more profitable practice. That's what we help consultants with here at Intermetrics with a variety of different processes and tools, but that's our core focus. And yeah, he's right. If you got an hour or two to sit around in the middle of the day learning how to become more profitable, certain personality traits, that's one of the things that you struggle with is it's easier to go off and continue to learn and have all 10 of your questions answered before you squeeze the trigger. So today we're talking about some really pretty scary stats. Brian and I were looking at this shit last week. And according to the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, which has got really accurate numbers, I mean, people are picking out their qualification, what classification they are in their jobs for reporting to the IRS and so on and so forth. There are anywhere between, depending on how you define it, 700 to 800,000 independent business consultants in just the United States. I don't have stats from a similar bureau in Europe or UK, but I can tell you it's going to be very similar because we work with 1,600 of our consultants in 52 countries, and I know it's the same. So that's not IT consultants, that's not landscaping consultants, that's not technology or anything. That's strictly people that do management consulting, sales consulting, human capital development, team building, leadership, executive coaching, whatever. 700,000. And even at first I'm thinking, all right, well, that doesn't sound too big and scary because there's, 300-400 million people in the United States. We just did the math before we turned on the recording here. So the U.S. Population looks at about 311 major cities. That's a city with 100,000 or more. So the basement is 100,000 population in a metro area. It's not a huge city. There's 311 of those. If we take it all the way down to just 50,000, because a lot of the people watching this go, well, I live in a more rural area or I work virtually. So that's 50,000. That's 622 cities in the United States. 700,000 divided by 622 is 1,125.4. Here's the thing, people. You got a lot of competition. Wherever you live, there's probably in your backyard 1,125. And the 0.4 consultant is the person who's not going to be in business long. Don't worry about them. But that's a bunch of competition. You got to stand out. That's today's message. How do you stand out? Because if you just go out and do the same thing everybody else does, and I think a lot of you watching this are like, yeah, but I'm different. Because we've seen this, Brian, you've seen it, you've done it. I've done it, and you've seen it on TEDx and other things. Everybody watching this video, raise your hand if you think you're above average. And on average, what's our classes? We've normally seen about 75 to 80% of the room raises their hand.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
30 to 35% of you are wrong because statistically average means, 50%. And everybody thinks they're better than average. And when we talk about these things, everybody says, oh, but I'm special and I'm unique and mommy told me so. Okay, cool. But that should scare the hell out of you because you got 700,000 people doing what you do. And if you don't stand out, if you don't do things differently to make sure that your competition goes in the, in the rearview mirror and your prospects see you as unique and novel and different and you get the business, you ain't going to be in business long.
Well, and think about it this way too, Jay. Look at it and go, man, there are so many different ways that organizations are looking to pick, who they may consider as a possible consultant or an advisor or whatever. I mean, so not only do you have this huge number, literally 1,125 in the backyard of everybody that's watching this video. Now you've got folks that, may understand web marketing or web development or that kind of stuff and just be right out of school. And they've got this really cool, super interactive website with like documents that communicate back and forth and make them look like they've been around for, 25 or 30 years. When maybe this is a kid who just got out of school and is just dipping their toe in the water. I mean, the competition, I would say, is even incredibly complex competition as well. I mean, it just.
Oh, and I think there's basics, and we teach this in our classes, you know, the basic requirements that you have to play the game. So that doesn't stand out. That's not it. You can't go, and Brian's point is, just because the guy says he's got a fantastic website, he's right. The guy might be a former web developer and think, now I'm going to get into consulting. And so his websites look beautiful and it's fantastic and there's all kinds of the right stuff. But that doesn't mean anything to substance. Just because you have cleats, that means you get to play on the field. That doesn't mean you're going to stand out. I have a helmet, you know. Yeah. But it's funny because we see a part of this is because they're independent. You guys are independent consultants. And so you don't necessarily have as much connection with the competition and stop to take the time to watch from a marketing evaluation standpoint, let's say, what is it that they're doing that's really different? And how do I change, you know, to be more differentiated? And we'll see. But here's the thing. Well, people will be like, oh, my program's better. Bullshit. You know, I just met you. I don't know your program's better. And you telling me it's better doesn't make you stand out. Well, you know, I've got 25 years of experience doing this. All right. And all the heads went down. I stand out. Yeah. Most of them have 24 to 27 years experience. So you're right back down to the crowd. What really makes you different and how do you stand out? One of the things that we teach in how to really differentiate yourself is using tools and processes that the competition doesn't, and that the person who's thinking about buying you, right, hiring you and your value goes, wow, now that's different. That's novel. And we teach what's called the diagnostic sales process here at Intermetrics. And in very short order, because there's an entire video about it. So subscribe and go back and watch the videos because they're all listed here, and go to intermetrics.com and you can find this video on the DSP, diagnostic sales process. But in short, it's talking about before you do anything, you seek to diagnose what's going on. So in marketing and in selling, I'm not going out and showing up and throwing up and saying, I have a leadership development program that is different and better. And, you know, Chevy says the same thing and Ford says the same thing. It's not different. Instead, we teach going out and your first contact is diagnostic. You're thinking like a physician and you're using our psychometric assessments to say, before we talk about anything, and Brian has one of the best examples of this I've seen in 20 years of doing this, is I don't know what's wrong. I'm not going to talk to you about my leadership development program. I'm not going to talk to you about my sales training or my coaching yet. Okay. The only thing that we need to figure out first is, how do I figure out what's not working for you? What is it and what is it about? And that's part of switching the conversation. The narrative isn't about me. One of the reasons people don't stand out is because somebody says, what do you do? Spotlight. Oh, I'm going to spend the next 10 minutes showing up and throwing up, telling you what I do and all the features and the reasons why it works better. Instead, our narrative says, well, let me talk about you. And right there, that is different. And so Brian can give you an example and we can elaborate from this first example afterwards. And we're going to do a series of these. Brian, what we say, this is the first in how to differentiate and standing out, the first in a series of, hell if we know, you know.
To be determined, yeah.
Determined, we're not sure, because it's one of the biggest things that we see people struggle with, and one of the biggest things that we teach is what you do after you get the business is a whole different world. But if you don't get the business, then what's the point? It's all a moot point.
And I think, you know, in one of our previous webinars, we talked about how our own personal mindsets prevent us from being able to capture really what's in our backyard opportunity-wise. People get overwhelmed by that number of 1125, and all of a sudden they start studying other people's websites, other people's marketing materials, and they start they feel jealous, right? And they go, gosh, before I can even go do it, I gotta get all this stuff put together. Here's the deal. You know, people don't buy websites. They don't make decisions off of what you do from a marketing slick or from some sexy Facebook page. When I got going, originally we were going and I was helping somebody else grow a firm. And it was interesting because he was a consultant who thought that we had to have all of those types of things. And I just went out and I didn't know anything. So we stumbled over so much stuff just because we go out and earn the right to serve. And that's a key belief system of just simply saying, how do I earn the right to serve somebody? So the diagnostic sales process is another way of saying that. It's just, we're going to go out and we're going to simply, because what if you walked into a doctor's office and said, you know, when I bend over this way, I feel a twinge in my hip. And he says, you know what? I know what that is. Tomorrow I've got a break between I'm doing a lower L5 and I'm going to do an upper. We'll just fit you in. We'll cut you. We'll fuse a couple of these together. We'll rock and roll. And that's, so I know it's funny and joking, but that takes a lot of courage to be able to slow down and say, I may have, X number of years of experience, but I don't know what this individual's situation is right now.
What you're saying is you would never find a physician that says, oh, based on your telling me this hurts, I've already diagnosed what's wrong with you and I've prescribed surgery.
Right.
If a company says our salespeople really suck, it's consultative malpractice to say, oh, well, I've seen that 100 times before, like a surgeon has seen it 100 times before. And almost always it ends up being some need for a laminectomy, but they never would stop, just say, well, let's go into surgery. Consultants oftentimes want to jump on that and go, oh, well, here's my leadership or my sales development program. Here's why it's better. Here's how it's different, and it's not any different than surgery, in my opinion. You're operating on the company. You're going inside and messing with the way people think, and you're talking to them about changing the way they do things. You're charging them $25,000, $50,000, $75,000. It's like surgical corporate surgery. I mean, this is a big deal. No one should do it. It happens all the time. And here's what happens. You don't look different. You don't look any different than anybody else that says, okay, well, let's talk about my sales program. One of the ways that we talk about diagnostic sales process is the impetus of your discussion with the person. The very first thing I do when I wake up in the morning is I go out and try to find out how can I find people that have something that hurt, and let's figure out what's causing it. I'm not thinking about solutions. I know we got the solutions. And I know that if I don't, in my network of 1,600 consultants, I have someone that does. So like a physician, I may not be a hand surgeon or a cardiologist. I know plenty of them. So even if I don't find the stuff that I want to deliver, because all I do is strategic planning, or all I do is executive coaching, or all I do is sales or team building, that's great. It's important to have a network for that reason. But you can't just say, well, let me tell you what I do and why it's different. Brian's points are very valid. Having the website, it's important. It's the cleats. Having a non-AOL or Yahoo email address is important. It's the shoulder pads. Having that stuff helps, but it doesn't differentiate you. Having a cool, fancy corporate name doesn't differentiate you, because the other 700,000 are coming up with cool, fancy names. Having a great website doesn't differentiate you, because they're all doing the same thing. What's different is the attitude you take in how you actually talk and what it is, the substance that you're talking about with a client. I'm telling you, it's the biggest differentiator you can have. When they say, what do? You become different and you stand out when you say, I'll tell you what I do by showing you. I help diagnose problems in your organization. We've got a fleet of tools that help us do that. I'm a master certified expert in them. But here's what I'm talking about. What's not working? What keeps you up at 2 o'clock at night? And you spin the narrative right back around because you want it focusing on them. This is tough because your natural tendency is to just talk about me. And we make the excuse of saying they asked. Right. Well, it would be rude if I didn't tell them all about why I'm the greatest and latest thing since sliced bread. So a lot of companies will put out RFPs, and even informal ones that say, hey, we're open and interested. Brian has one of the biggest ball stories of just being bold and saying, okay, we're going to live this diagnostic process. And I'll let Brian tell the story, but as you're listening to it, bear in mind, what would I likely do? What did the rest of the consultants out there do? And be honest, don't say, I'd have done that too. 99% of the time, people will just conform to what the client asks because they go, this is what they want. But physicians don't do stuff just because that's what you want. So Brian, I'll shut up.
Yeah.
You go ahead.
No, it's cool. And here's the thing, Jay, I think is important to understand. A lot of times what prevents us from doing it is sometimes through that diagnostic selling process, what starts to kind of occur is because we help that client or that organization see their problem with a different light, sometimes then they feel self-equipped enough then to go off and do it. And that fear is, and I felt that fear when I first started was, man, if I help them see this with too much clarity, they may not want to use me to help solve their problem. And so I was invited years ago to, come in because there was an organization that said, hey, you know what, we are going to put out this request. And what they decided to do was, in the past, they'd only had like one of their key officers go out and, every company has multiple officers that go to executive retreats all the time, and they'll hear one, person speak, and then that becomes the flavor of the quarter, the month, the year. And so they had gone through this iteration enough times. They said, you know what, this year, as a collaborative body, as officers, we're going to all listen to the greatest pitches of the top 5 training consulting companies in our market. So of the 1,125, as I've now just recently learned, or in my backyard, I was picked to be one of the group. Yeah. And maybe it's bigger because it's more than 50,000. But what was crazy is I got this request and they said, da, 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 and I said, okay. And they said, here's what we're going to have you do. We're going to give you 17 minutes to come in and pitch us on why you, right?
With a whole bunch of others, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there was a line. It was kind of like an interview thing, right? And so the first question I had in thinking about this was, if this was an RFP, like we're trying to sell concrete or we're trying to, get the business, one of the keys in doing that is, well, I want to be last, right? Because I want to be the one that leaves the best impression. And then I started thinking traditionally going, well, maybe I want to be the one that sets the precedent of, maybe I just want to be first so I can give them a different taste. And then I go back to what you were saying, Jay, as I started thinking, you know what? No. Why 5? Are you kidding me? 5? You read the old book, Complex Selling by Jeff Tooley. He says, best case scenario in a vacuum, they're going to walk out of there being able to articulate in a best case scenario with auditory, visual, kinesthetic, 24% of retention of the value you bring. Multiply that by 5. I'm a dart. I don't got nothing. So thinking, what do I do? What do I believe? Well, I believe that the diagnostic process is the way to go. I've got 17 minutes to pitch them on what, Jay? They've self-diagnosed that they need training and development. And that's a key piece that, with your background in medicine and the medical devices and such, if they're going to self-diagnose, man, if I prescribe off that self-diagnosis and we go to a court of law, dude, that's not going to stand up really well. So I know I've only got about 3 minutes to go here because our 20-minute time limit's come, but here's what happened. I had to get my head right with what and why and how, and what do I want to leave them with? And all I could do was look at them and simply say, you know what? All I'm going to leave with is the opportunity to stand out and create curiosity where they go, you know what? Of the 5, I don't remember anything, but I do remember this one dude stood out. And so as I was getting ready to go, I actually did put together materials. And then I started thinking, no, I'm not going to go off of what they've self-diagnosed with. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the opportunity to take these 11 officers and put them into a situation where I'm going to ask them some questions that they may not have the answers to. And so I actually heard the dude before me, and he owned the local, I'll just call it the local Action Coach distributorship. He's pretty passionate. The guy walked in, he had some pom-poms and played some Rocky music, and it was pretty sweet, right? Had a lot of fun.
Differentiating, right?
How am I going to follow that dude? He's pretty freaking good. They were all cheering, and I don't know if they did a trust fall in 17 minutes. I don't know what it was, but I walked in there, and I simply handed out a little questionnaire, and I made him answer some questions. And where that came from was some questions off of our organizational health checkup. And then I just simply said, okay, folks, I said, let me ask you this. You expected me to come in here and give you my pitch on why to work with you. Here's my question. I don't know if the issue you have is even fixable. I don't know. I said, if you guys just want to drop $50,000, I'm not your guy because I don't do entertainment. I said, what I do is we fix issues, and we have a process that determines if we're even the right organization to work with you. And I don't know that. And so my question to you is this. Are you willing to slow this down to figure out where you all 11 agree? Because here's what I did find out. Over the last 6 years, you've done training and development, and here's the one thing I don't understand. How come you in the last 6 years, 7 years, whatever it was, have worked with 5 different training organizations? I'm kind of curious and confused. How did you decide that you were going to change every year? And they sat around and they kind of went, well, I said, here's what that tells me. That tells me you're not doing an effective job of getting an alignment on what you should really work on. Because here's why people partner with us. Because we create change and we create a common vocabulary in organizations around talent. If you want entertainment, that's fine. We don't entertain. What we do is we create change. Common language that allows you to objectively talk about talent. And they all sat there and like, well, yeah. I said, so if you change every 4 to 5 years, that tells me that you either have one of 2 issues. Either you got people that don't do an effective job of getting better, or you do a poor job of picking companies to work with in terms of getting your people better. I don't know which one it is. And so I pushed it back to them. And they said, oh my gosh, we've only got 1 minute left. Here's what we want to do. We want to continue talking to you. And I said, probably not going to be able to do that because you only had 17 minutes to determine if you want to spend the next year with me. So maybe I should just talk to you next year. And long story short, Jay, they did. They invited us to come back. and we had them take the organizational health check, which is a diagnostic tool that puts them on the periphery of their team and organization, 11 key areas of performance and profitability. And then we facilitated a discussion. And I said this, here's what you're going to end up with. You're going to end up with an engineering analysis that'll allow you to go out and pick another company to build your building, because you're going to have an engineering analysis done that you guys built. Or if you want to go ahead and move forward with us, if we fit in that realm, rock and roll.
Well, here's the key that it was. So you got 5, 6, 7 competitors all waiting in a room, like to be interviewed for a job.
The waiting room. We're looking at each other going, oh my gosh, he's got a cool suit.
Yeah,
I like her
exactly.
shoes.
You know, he's got red socks. Damn.
Yeah.
But, and we talk about it, you know, the profitable consultant. Everything revolves around this as far as the training goes, because this is the lessons that we've learned from all these 1,600 consultants around the world for 20 years. Brian said, no, I'm not going to show up with my slide deck and my pitch book and my PowerPoint presentation and go in there and go, hi, it's not, Shark Tank or something. I'm going to run in and say, hey, here's what we do and here's how we do it and yada, yada, yada with a hat. And here's how I differentiate myself. He said, screw that. How we differentiate ourselves is we do it differently because we do it better. We stop and we say, I can't tell you what we're going to be able to do for you because I don't know what's wrong.
Right.
So, if you guys don't want to diagnose, if you don't want to truly understand what's not working and what's causing your problems, I don't want to work with you. And he was the only guy that didn't show up with his pointer and say, this is us, and we work with these 23 companies, and here's the average increase in the top line and bottom line revenue that we see. He said, this is what we're going to have to do. And if you don't want to do that, I love it, because it's like, great, we don't want to do business with you anyway. But that's standing out. It's standing out because he took the diagnostic model. That's what we teach. And the rule of the diagnostic sales process, this is a sales process that leads into consulting, is he or she who identifies the cause of the problem always gets to fix it. So there's a lot of those people with that scarcity mindset that are watching this that are fearful. If I go in and I help them diagnose that their sales leaders need more talent in this area, or their teams aren't communicating because of this, they'll go fix it themselves. Then they don't need me. No. It's not what happens, because no one sits in front of a physician and says, thanks for showing me the MRI that shows me that my meniscus is destroyed and I've got this bucket handle tear. Bye. And now we're going to go out and get back in the yellow pages and find somebody that can fix. No, if you show them what's really wrong, they are going to look at you and say, how do we fix it? He or she who identifies the cause of the problem gets to fix it. And the biggest way to differentiate yourself and stand out from the other 1,125 in your backyard to 2,200 in a bigger city is to say, I'm not here to talk about what I do. I'm here to figure out what's not working for you. And let's see if we can figure out why. And the only other thing I'll leave you with in however much time we have left is oftentimes people very early say, well, what do you cost? The best answer is, I don't know. I don't know what's wrong with you. There's no way I know what I cost, because I don't know what I have to do, because I don't know what's wrong.
The right answer is you asked me the wrong question.
Yeah, we just need sales training. Well, I don't know that you need sales training. That's not how I work. And that's how you differentiate yourself. It's scary, but I'm telling you, it works. You have to not conform to what the other 700,000 are going to say, which is, oh, well, if you need sales training, I'll show you what I do for sales training. You don't know exactly what type of training or why they need it or if they even need it. That's how you stand apart and say, I'm the expert here.
Portfolio of crap. It's
That's
amazing.
right. Here, just open up and I'll shovel it in.
Like a surgeon giving you a freaking scalpel. Here, cut yourself. Let me know how that goes. Hey, we hit 20 minutes, didn't we, Jay?
Yep. Did your alarm go off?
My alarm's going off right now.
Well, then that's 20 minutes, Tom. So time to go sell some shit, people. See you next week.
Thanks, Jay. Later.
Bye.